Hello everyone and welcome back to another video, and this will be actually the first video in a new series I want to do. I'm going to call it, I think, Summoner Sundays, and it's just going to be Riftbound content. I'm not really sure exactly how it will shape out in the end, but just to get that really kicked off, I wanted to do a quick primer about what Riftbound is and the kind of details that you need to know before you hop into the game. So let's go ahead and hop into that. But first, before we get into it, make sure you stick around to the end of the video and check the description. There's going to be instructions on how to enter to win a giveaway for Riftbound. And then at the end of the video, we'll reveal what cards are getting given away. So make sure you check into that. Also, before we get into it too much, I have a TCG affiliate link. I'd really appreciate it if you checked out that. If anything in this primer or whatever gets you excited about trying the game, please do your purchases through that affiliate link. It really helps me out. All right, hopping into it, and be mindful this is going to be a very high level thing just so that you guys can get a taste for how the game works. So the main conceit of the game is you are using your legend to lead an army of units as they battle for control over different battlefields. So that's going to be a lot of lingo, and we'll go into it. But what you do when you control those battlefields or capture those battlefields is you score points, and you're trying to reach a certain number to win the game. You also have access to support cards like spells and gear that can sway battlefield combats and make sure that things come out in your favor. It is a game where you make decisions on both yours and your opponent's turn. And the resource system, which uses what are called runes, is a really interesting one where there's a lot of trade-offs between taking extra power now at the expense of maybe some future development. And I find it really interesting, so I wanted to kind of highlight that. Going into deck construction, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to choose your legend. So your legend, for those coming from One Piece, it is pretty similar to what your leader would be. The difference being that these legends do not get to attack. They do, though, determine which domains or colors you have access to. So in this case here, we have Lux, the Lady of Luminosity, who gives us access to the blue and yellow domains, or mind and order domains. And then she has a static ability that when you play a spell that costs 5 or more, I get to draw a card. And most of the leaders in the game will have these passive abilities. They're kind of the texture that really gives you something to build around in the deck. After you've determined who your legend is, you then get to pick your runes. So you get access to 12 runes that you get, and they will come out randomly, so you have to shuffle them up before you do them. They come out similar to how they do in One Piece, where they come out in a pattern. You get 2 a turn, or 3 on the first turn if you are going second. You will want to pick the ratios that fit with your deck. And the way they work is they pay for 2 different types of costs that show up on cards. Both an energy cost, which is done by just tapping it or exhausting it, and then a power cost, which you pay for by putting them back into your deck. So if you're coming from One Piece, the energy cost is almost identical to how Dawn work. And then a power cost would be equivalent to about a Dawn -1 that you might see out of a purple card. So that's kind of how you can conceptualize this. Moving on, we have your chosen champion. This is like the other half of your leader, kind of mixed with an individual card in your deck. So you have to pick one that matches your leader. So because I have been playing with Lux, I have 2 different options that I can play from, which are Lux Crown Guard and Lux Illuminated. So they must match the leader. They go in a special zone that is you have guaranteed access to, which is kind of like it's in your hand. It acts as if it's in your hand. If you're familiar with Magic the Gathering and Commander, this would be kind of like your commander. The difference between this and Commander, though, is that this card does not return to that zone if it is removed from the field. It just goes to the trash like normal. So it's like a one-time Commander. So while I have these up on the thing, I'll kind of explain how the card costs work. You have this first cost here. In this case on Lux Illuminated, it is 6 energy, which means you have to tap 6 runes. And then it also costs, in addition, 1 blue power. And so power would be take one of my blue runes that I may have already tapped and put it back into my deck. That makes for a pretty interesting kind of balance because your most powerful cards will have extra, they will have power costs as well. And when you pay power costs, you're setting yourself back on future turns and not having access to as much energy, potentially. So it's an interesting payoff there. Next thing I want to go over while I have these up is this stat up here in the corner is Might. If you're from One Piece, this works just like your power does in One Piece, where you compare your power versus theirs. And if any character takes damage greater than their might, then they will go to the trash. Unlike in One Piece ties, everybody loses rather than there being an attacker-defender split. So if a 5 swings into a 5, then both characters will lose. Another thing that a lot of units have is they'll have some abilities here. So this Lux, when you play a spell that costs 5 or more, she gets +3 might this turn. And then the other one gives me the ability to add a reaction speed, which we'll go over in a little bit, add 2 energy only to use on spells. So you can see that these two both kind of split and balance out on working with either part of the leader. Because the leader cares about spells that cost 5 or more, you can either get a stronger character when you're doing what you're supposed to do, or you can have a support card that allows you to pay extra energy so that you can play more expensive spells. So that is your chosen champion. Next thing you're going to fill out your deck with is units. These are going to be your main things for doing the game. They're what you're going to use to capture battlefields and to hold on to battlefields, and they all have different useful abilities. You're allowed up to 3 of each card in your deck, and that includes additional copies of your chosen champion. So if you have 1 chosen champion go into your chosen champion zone, you are allowed 2 more in your deck, for reaching up to that total of 3 of each card in your deck. So these all have different abilities. You can use the champion units of other legends in your deck, but they can't be your chosen champion. So you get special access to the ones that match your guys, but your legend, but you still have access to all the other ones. So that's units. Next up we have spells. Spells are one-time effects, events from One Piece, instants and sorceries from Magic the Gathering. They work pretty similar. They have the same power and energy costs as you would see on units. There are offensive effects like killing a guy, or defensive things where you can reduce an opponent's power or something like that. And there are also 3 different speeds that you can use these actions at. And the same holds true for abilities on units, or what we'll get into next year. But there's 3 different speeds. There is no designated speed, which means you can only use it on your turn when you're not in combat. There are action spells, which can be used on either player's turn, but only as the starting point for combat. There is a chain, as they call it, or stack, as you would be familiar with for Magic, where you get to go back and forth and add stuff. Actions can be played on your opponent's turn in a showdown, but only on an empty chain. And then reactions, which is the highest speed, which can be used in response to any other ability, except for ones that generate resources. I could move into a battlefield, play my Blast of Power because I'm in a showdown, and then my opponent could respond with a smoke screen, for example, just using the cards that we have on screen. So just like you would expect, these one-time effects vary in power. Sometimes they're really good, but at the cost of you having to kind of wait on using them a lot of times. And the specific speed designations can be really interesting for this game because some actions are very strong and are the kinds of things that you would want to react with, but you can only use them on empty stacks. So it makes for some interesting dynamics with that. And then you have your strongest speed of reaction, which are usually a little bit weaker effects, but have the flexibility of being able to play them in response to anything else. Next up, we have gears. Gears are usually ongoing effects or have some sort of repeatable ability that you can do. Like this garbage grabber lets you put 3 cards from your trash back on the bottom of your library to draw cards. And you get to do that over and over throughout the course of the game. Spaded hook lets you sacrifice guys to find bigger guys off the top of your deck. So it makes some interesting things. There's all sorts of different effects on gears. This garbage grabber, very minor effect, something that you would only put in a deck just as kind of a glue card to kind of keep things moving. Baited hook, though, on the other hand, is a deck-defining card. So they can vary. These cards can vary very drastically in power level, but they work just like all the other ones where you've got energy costs and potentially power costs and have abilities that can be used moving on. The next thing, which is slightly different than the rest of your deck, is your battlefields. So the course of the game happens through battling for control of 2 battlefields, one that you've selected and one that your opponent has selected. And depending on what the effects are, they can pretty importantly affect the way the game plays. So Trifarian War Camp here, for example, gives all of your units +1 might, or all units here +1 might. And for anyone who's played OP01 Zoro knows the way you take advantage of these kind of flat abilities that affect everything is you get a lot of guys. So the very small dude's aggro deck can take advantage of this place better than maybe a slower big dude deck who would only get 1 buff out of this, whereas 3 small dudes would get 3 separate buffs from this. So what you want to do is you have to pick 3 battlefields, and you pick the ones that work best for you and maybe worse for your opponents. And it makes for an interesting dynamic. There's a bunch of different types of battlefields, some that allow you to move in and out freely, some that restrict movement, some that buff power, some that give extra effects to spells. There's a bunch of different options, and it makes for a really interesting kind of thing. So now that we've gone through all the different cards that go in your deck, how do you go about winning the game? So as you play out units, they start out in your base, and then you move them into battlefields on subsequent turns. So one of the ways you can get points is by conquering a battlefield. That is done by moving a unit into a battlefield, and either you're unopposed, and then you get it conquered for free, or if your opponent has stuff in the battlefield, then you go to do a combat, where your might ultimately gets compared to their might, and the winner gets to have control of the battlefield. Or if there's a tie, then nobody wins and nobody gets to conquer the battlefield. This is where your spells will come in, where you get to mess with your opponent's dudes during combat and give yourself an edge to try to win in combat. The other way you can score points is by holding a battlefield. So after you conquer a battlefield, if your opponent is unsuccessful in winning a combat on that battlefield, and you get all the way around to the start of your turn again with units in a battlefield, then you hold a battlefield and you earn another point. This game is a race to 8 points usually. And so holding and conquering are really important ways of gaining points. The other thing to worry about with winning the game is your 8th point has restrictions on what can work. So either you can hold and then get your 8th point and then you win. If you would try to conquer on your 8th point, then there is a kind of a check. If you have gotten points on all other battlefields in the game at that time, then you are successfully able to get your 8th point. Otherwise, you will stay at 7 points and you will draw a card. And then some decks also have other ways of gaining points. Like, for example, this Yasuo here, who, if he can move three times in a turn, then you gain a point. And this can count for your last thing. So it makes for some interesting dynamics, and it makes for some really neat tempo situations where having an even number of points, going from 6 to 8, you can do in one turn. Going from 5 to 8, you cannot do in one turn, because you can only score 1 point on each battlefield each turn. So it makes for some really interesting dynamics where you try to kind of deny your opponents some early points, maybe, so that you can put them off of the 6 to 8 thing. Or if you're playing like an alternate win con kind of thing like Yasuo here, then you can lean into it and save up to get maybe even a 3rd point on your last turn through something like this. So that is kind of a basic overview of how the game works, and I hope you guys will stick around in future weeks. I'll try to do more content and show maybe some gameplay to show you guys how it works. But before you go, make sure you check out the description for details on how to win some fancy cardboard. I'm going to cut now over to a live shot of the cards that I'm planning on giving away, and I'll give you some extra information about the giveaway. So I'll see you over there. All right, now to show off the card that is going to be given away, we have this Yasuo card. So this is an alternate art of the green Yasuo card. He is 6 cost, 6 power, or 6 might, and he has 2 power costs here. Let's see if we can get this closer here. And he has, when he attacks, that's when he moves into a battlefield for kind of like on offense. Then he deals damage equal to his might to an enemy here. So one of the things that the Yasuo leader does, who is purple green, is he lets you move your guys as part of his leader ability. So you can use the attack ability here off of your leader ability, which can make him a little bit faster than maybe some other cards. But I was lucky enough to pull this alt art here, and I'm trying to make sure that I get all of the shininess here. It's hard for me to tell exactly where the shine is. But this is what I'll be giving away to one lucky winner who comments on the video and is a subscriber and who has liked the video. If you're looking for something to comment, because I know it's always awkward to comment something unprompted or whatever, tell me if you've ever played League of Legends, which legend was your favorite, and are you excited for them to kind of show up in the game if you're hoping to get into Riftbound here. So that'll be about it for this, and I will send you guys back to pre-recorded me for the wrap-up. All right, so I hope you guys are excited to see who wins the giveaway, and I hope you're excited about that Yasuo card. It's a really pretty card, and I hope you guys are enjoying it. And I hope you guys are looking forward to the rest of this series. I've really been enjoying this game, and I hope you guys can come along on the journey with me. One thing I mentioned in my first video last Friday was the first regional for this game is actually happening in my hometown. So I'm going to be doing that. By the time this video goes up, it'll be 1 week to go before that event. So I'll be practicing, probably trying to do some locals to practice for that event. But I hope you guys stick around for that, and I hope you guys enjoy the series, and good luck to everyone who's entered to win the giveaway. But I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.